Welcome to the podcast, Learn English Through Life, exploring emotions, connections, and the English language.
Welcome to this episode that could completely change the way you see depression. Today we're diving into a topic that everyone has heard of, yet so few truly understand. If you've ever felt an overwhelming emptiness and unshakable fatigue, or if you know someone who's silently struggling, then this episode is for you. Did you know that depression is one of the leading causes of disability worldwide, yet most people don't seek help? Together, we're going to uncover why that is and how we can change it. Depression is not just sadness or a lack of willpower. It's a silent battle fought by millions every single day, often in isolation. But we're here to break that silence. Joining me today are Dr. Emily Carter, a mental health expert, and James Miller, someone who has bravely chosen to share their story. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand depression better, but you'll also learn how to take the first steps toward healing or supporting someone you care about. First, let's welcome Dr. Emily Carter. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. My goal today is to share insights about what depression really is and how we can approach it with care and understanding.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I'm sure your expertise will be invaluable to our listeners. And now I'd like to introduce our second guest, James Miller, who has kindly agreed to share his personal journey with us. James, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm James Miller, and I'm here to share my experience of living with depression, what it was like, how it impacted my life, and how I've been working towards healing.
Thank you, James. Your story is going to resonate with so many people. I'm grateful to both of you for being here today and for your openness. Together, we'll shed light on this silent struggle and explore ways to better support ourselves and others. Now that we've introduced everyone, let's start by understanding the basics. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, it is estimated that 3.8% of the global population suffers from depression, including 5% of adults and 5.7% of individuals over the age of 60. Depression is 50% more common in women than in men. Additionally, more than 700,000 people die by suicide each year, making it the fourth leading cause of death among individuals aged 15 to 29. Dr. Carter, could you explain to our listeners what depression really is? How is it different from just feeling sad or having a bad day?
Thank you, Michael. Depression is a mental health condition that goes beyond temporary feelings of sadness. It's a persistent state that affects how someone thinks, feels, and behaves. It can cause significant difficulties in daily life, such as trouble concentrating, fatigue, loss of interest in things they once enjoyed, and even physical symptoms like changes in appetite or sleep patterns. Unlike temporary sadness, depression can last weeks, months, or even years without proper treatment. According to the World Health Organization, depression is one of the leading causes of disability worldwide. Depressive disorders, commonly referred to as depression, are widespread mental health conditions that affect people from all walks of life, regardless of age, gender, or social status. They are characterized by persistent sadness or a prolonged loss of interest and pleasure in activities that once brought joy. It is essential to distinguish depression from ordinary mood changes or the emotions triggered by daily life challenges. During a depressive episode, the low mood dominates most of the day, almost every day, for a period of at least 2 weeks. Individuals experiencing depression may also face sleep disturbances, changes in appetite, low self-esteem, suicidal thoughts, or a profound sense of hopelessness about the future. Intense fatigue and difficulty concentrating are also common symptoms.
That's really helpful to understand. What are some of the most common causes or triggers of depression?
Anyone can experience depression. People who have been subjected to abuse or have gone through traumatic losses or other stressful events are more likely to suffer from depression than others. Depression affects women more often than men. There's a genetic component. Some people are more predisposed due to family history. Additionally, chemical imbalances in the brain, specifically with neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, play a role. It's important to remember that depression isn't anyone's fault, and the causes can vary from person to person.
Thank you for breaking that down so clearly. James, hearing this, do you recognize any of these factors in your own experience?
Absolutely. For me, it started after I lost my job a few years ago. I thought I was just stressed at first, but over time, I found myself withdrawing from family and friends, struggling to get out of bed, and feeling completely numb. Looking back, I now understand that it was a mix of situational stress and possibly some underlying factors I hadn't addressed before.
Thank you for sharing that, James. I'm sure many listeners can relate to what you just described. Dr. Carter, what are some of the key symptoms people should look out for if they think they or someone they know might be experiencing depression?
A depressive episode is characterized by the presence of a depressed mood, feelings of sadness, emptiness, or irritability, often accompanied by a loss of interest or pleasure in activities. It is important to distinguish a depressive episode from ordinary mood fluctuations. In the case of a depressive episode, the depressed mood persists for most of the day, every day, for at least 2 weeks. Other symptoms commonly associated with a depressive episode include difficulty concentrating, excessive guilt or low self-esteem, hopelessness about the future, suicidal thoughts, sleep disturbances, changes in appetite or weight, intense fatigue or loss of energy. Depression can significantly impact all aspects of life, including relationships, family dynamics, and professional or academic performance.
This has been incredibly insightful so far. Let's take a moment to go deeper into James's story to understand how depression affected his life and what steps he took to work through it.
Of course. When I lost my job at first, I thought it was just temporary stress. But as weeks turned into months, I started feeling completely drained, like I had no energy to even get out of bed. I felt disconnected from everyone around me, including my family. Simple tasks, like answering a phone call or making dinner, felt impossible. I remember thinking, why am I even trying? That's when I realized it wasn't just stress. I was dealing with something much deeper.
That sounds incredibly difficult, James. How did it affect your relationships with the people closest to you?
It was tough. I pulled away from my friends because I didn't want to talk about what I was going through. I felt ashamed and didn't want to burden anyone. With my family, it was even harder because they didn't fully understand. They would say things like, just snap out of it, or you'll feel better soon. It made me feel even more isolated.
Thank you for being so honest. I think many listeners can relate to those feelings of isolation. At what point did you decide to seek help, and what did that process look like for you?
The turning point came when my partner sat me down and said, I'm worried about you. I think you need to talk to someone. It wasn't easy. I resisted at first because I didn't think therapy would help, but eventually I started seeing a therapist and realized how much I needed to talk about what I was feeling. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it was the first step toward healing.
That's such an important message, James. Taking that first step can be the hardest part. Dr. Carter, what advice would you give to someone who's hesitant to seek help, like James was at first?
That's a great question. It's completely normal to feel hesitant, especially with the stigma around mental health. My advice is to take it one step at a time. Start by talking to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, or even a support line. And remind yourself that seeking help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a courageous act of self-care.
Now that we've explored what depression is and heard James's powerful story, let's talk about solutions. Dr. Carter, if someone listening right now thinks they might be experiencing depression, what's the very first step they should take?
The first step is acknowledging that you're not feeling like yourself and that it's okay to ask for help. From there, it's important to reach out, whether that's to a doctor, a therapist, or even a trusted friend. Professional support, such as therapy or medication, can make a significant difference, but it all starts with that first conversation.
That's such an important reminder. For someone who may feel nervous about therapy or unsure where to start, what would you recommend?
If therapy feels overwhelming, start small. Many therapists offer free consultations or sliding scale fees, so you can find someone you're comfortable with. Additionally, there are online platforms like BetterHelp or Talkspace that provide access to licensed therapists from the comfort of your home. And if therapy isn't an option yet, consider journaling your thoughts or joining a local or online support group. Sometimes, even just putting your feelings into words can be a huge relief.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. James, from your experience, what practical steps helped you start feeling better?
For me, it was about creating small routines. At first, even getting out of bed felt impossible. So I started with one simple task each day, like drinking a glass of water as soon as I woke up. Over time, I added more, taking short walks, making my bed, or cooking something simple. It might seem small, but it gave me a sense of accomplishment. I also found mindfulness meditation helpful. Apps like Headspace or Calm were a great starting point.
Those small victories can really make a difference. Dr. Carter, what other strategies can help someone take control of their mental health?
Here are a few actionable steps. 1. Stay connected. Even if it's hard, try to reach out to someone every day. Isolation often makes depression worse. 2. Limit negative inputs. Reduce time spent on social media if it triggers comparison or negativity. Instead, focus on uplifting content like podcasts or books. 3. Move your body. Physical activity, even light exercise like stretching or yoga, releases endorphins that can boost your mood. Practice gratitude. Write down 3 things you're thankful for each day, even if they're small, like enjoying a cup of tea or seeing sunlight. 5. Set realistic goals. Break tasks into smaller, manageable steps so you don't feel overwhelmed. 6. Avoid consuming alcohol or drink less, and refrain from using illicit drugs, as these substances can worsen depression.
Those are fantastic tips. Thank you. James, how did you handle moments when you felt like nothing was working?
There were definitely days when it felt like I wasn't making any progress. On those days, I reminded myself that healing isn't linear. It's okay to have setbacks. I also leaned on my support network. My partner would encourage me to celebrate even the smallest wins, like finishing a book or going outside for fresh air. I learned to be kinder to myself, which was a big turning point.
That's such a powerful reminder to be kind to yourself. Dr. Carter, for those who want to support a loved one going through depression, what's the best way to help without overstepping?
The most important thing is to listen without judgment. Instead of saying things like, "You'll get over it," try saying, "I'm here for you, and I care about you." Offer practical help, like cooking a meal or accompanying them to a doctor's appointment. And remember to respect their pace. Healing takes time. Also, don't forget to take care of your own mental health. Supporting someone can be emotionally draining, so make sure you're finding ways to recharge.
That's incredibly helpful advice. Are there other tools or techniques people can explore on their own if they're not ready for therapy?
Absolutely. Here are a few ideas. Mindfulness apps, tools like Calm or Insight Timer, can help with meditation and stress relief. Creative outlets. Expressing yourself through writing, art, or music can be therapeutic. Sleep hygiene. Establish a consistent bedtime routine. Avoid screens before bed and create a calming sleep environment. Hotlines and resources. Many countries have free mental health hotlines where you can talk to someone anonymously. It's a great first step if you're not ready for therapy yet.
Thank you both for sharing these practical tips. I hope anyone listening feels encouraged to take that first step, whether it's reaching out to someone, starting a new routine, or simply being there for a loved one. Before we wrap up, I'd like to take a moment to dive deeper into some important aspects of depression. Dr. Carter, let's start with a question many people have. Is depression purely a mental condition, or does it also affect the body?
That's an excellent question. Depression is not just a mental condition, it also has significant physical effects. For instance, people with depression often experience chronic fatigue, headaches, and even digestive problems. There's also a strong connection between depression and the immune system. Chronic stress and depression can weaken it over time. This highlights the importance of treating depression as a whole body condition, not just something in the mind.
That's Fascinating. What about the role of brain chemistry? We often hear about serotonin and dopamine in discussions about depression. Can you explain their importance?
Absolutely. Serotonin and dopamine are neurotransmitters, which are chemicals in the brain that regulate mood, energy levels, and motivation. In people with depression, these neurotransmitters can be imbalanced. That's why certain treatments, like antidepressants, focus on restoring these chemical levels. However, it's important to remember that brain chemistry is just one piece of the puzzle. Genetics, environment, and lifestyle also play significant roles.
You mentioned earlier the importance of lifestyle changes. Could you elaborate on how things like diet, exercise, and sleep can impact depression?
Of course, these factors are often underestimated, but can have a profound impact. For example, diet. Eating a balanced diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids, fruits, and vegetables supports brain health. Exercise. Even light physical activity can release endorphins, which act as natural mood lifters. Sleep. Poor sleep quality often worsens depression, so establishing a consistent sleep routine is crucial. Small changes in these areas can complement therapy and medication, creating a holistic approach to recovery.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. These insights are incredibly valuable. I hope our listeners find them helpful as they navigate their own journeys or support their loved ones. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed today. Depression is a silent battle that affects millions, but it's also a battle that no one has to face alone. We've learned that small steps, whether it's reaching out for help, creating a daily routine, or simply sharing your feelings, can make a big difference. And as James shared so beautifully, healing is not a straight path, but it's one worth walking. Before we close, I'd love to hear one final piece of advice or encouragement from each of you. Dr. Carter, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
If there's one thing I'd like you to remember, it's this: depression does not define you. You are not your struggles. Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Take it one day at a time, and don't hesitate to reach out to the many resources and people who want to support you.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. And James, what about you?
I just wanted to say to anyone listening who feels alone, you're not. There are people who care about you, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Give yourself permission to take small steps, and don't be afraid to lean on others. You're stronger than you think.
Thank you both for those beautiful words. To everyone listening, remember, it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to ask for help, whether it's through therapy, support from loved ones, or even taking a small action today. You're already moving forward. And if you're supporting someone else, thank you for your compassion and patience. It makes all the difference. Depression might feel overwhelming, but it's not unbeatable. With time, care, and the right support, healing is possible. You are not alone in this journey, and brighter days are ahead. And remember, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. If this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you'd like to share your thoughts or experiences, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.